Our first story is from an episode called Easel Kill Ya from Season 3, Episode 8, originally airing on July 17th, 1991. Our story opens with Jack Craig, a struggling artist and recovering alcoholic who attends an obsessive-compulsive support group. Jack's fraught personality is clear immediately. He's intense, edgy, and battling inner demons. At the support group meeting, Jack meets Sharon, a hopeful and caring woman who quickly becomes attracted to him. Their chemistry is fragile. Jack tries to stay sober, but his anger and dark impulses simmer beneath the surface. Sharon urges him to channel his pain into his art, but Jack's frustration mounts as he can't seem to make a breakthrough. An argument with his downstairs neighbor over loud music causes a deadly accident. Instead of panicking, Jack snaps a photo of the gruesome scene, a twisted muse for his next painting. This murder becomes Jack's macabre inspiration. He creates a painting of the scene, a stark and vivid image of death and violence. The piece catches the attention of Malcolm Mayflower, an art collector with a fascination for morbid, death-themed works. Mayflower commissions Jack for more paintings, offering him money and status that Jack desperately craves. As Jack's art career seemingly takes off, he grows more detached from therapy and from Sharon, who worries about his descent. Next, Jack has a confrontation with his landlady over late rent, where tempers flare and Jack's volatile nature is fully revealed. In a moment of uncontrolled rage, he pushes her down a flight of stairs, where she lands on a pair of garden shears, killing her instantly. Instead of panicking, Jack snaps a photo of the gruesome scene, a twisted muse for his next painting. Sharon discovers the gruesome photos, and in a panic, she flees from the apartment only to be hit by a taxi. At the hospital, we learn that the operation to save Sharon will be expensive. Driven by desperation, Jack resorts to killing again, this time a random man in a hospital parking lot. He uses the man's blood and dismembered body parts as raw materials for his new artwork, hoping the piece will sell for enough to save Sharon. But the tragedy deepens when he learns the man he killed was the very surgeon who could have saved Sharon's life. Jack's guilt consumes him, but it's too late to reverse the consequences. The episode closes on a grim note, with Jack's artistic success stained by death and despair. Easel Kill Ya is based on a story from the Vault of Horror number 31. In the comic, the story centers around an artist who stumbles upon a car accident and finds unexpected inspiration in painting the macabre scene. His art is suddenly in demand, and he begins seeking out more tragic events to recreate on canvas. In the HBO adaptation, the story is reimagined with a darker, more psychological edge. Jack Craig, played by Tim Roth, is a desperate, alcoholic painter whose career is in shambles. When he accidentally kills a neighbor and paints the aftermath, the piece is hailed as a masterpiece. Encouraged by a wealthy collector, he continues to kill for his art, falling deeper into madness. The show expands Jack's character, presenting him as a tortured artist haunted by failure and addiction. Unlike the more straightforward moral tale in the comic, the episode dives into themes of exploitation, creative desperation, and the toxic allure of fame. Our second story is an episode called Creep Course from Season 5, Episode 9, originally airing on November 10th, 1993. Our story begins on a college campus, where Stella Bishop is a diligent and somewhat introverted student enrolled in an Egyptology class taught by the pompous and arrogant Professor Finley. Stella is passionate about the subject but is a bit socially awkward, clearly the brainy type. In stark contrast, Reggie Skolnick is a cocky, failing football player who's desperate to pass his finals but has no interest in studying. Reggie convinces Stella to help him cheat on Professor Finley's final exam, promising to return the favor some way. One evening, Reggie persuades Stella to accompany him to Professor Finley's house under the pretense of studying. The house is old and eerie, decorated with Egyptian artifacts and relics, hinting at the professor's obsession with ancient Egypt. While Reggie schemes to steal the exam answers from Finley's study, Stella stumbles upon a hidden passage that leads to a basement containing a mysterious ancient Egyptian tomb. The tomb is elaborately designed with hieroglyphics, statues, and ceremonial objects, evoking an aura of dread. Professor Finley suddenly appears and reveals the dark truth. He and Reggie have made a pact to provide a virgin sacrifice each year to the mummy of Pharaoh Ramseth, who demands a new bride to maintain his power and immortality.
Reggie, help me!
Finley, you son of a bitch!
Reggie, help me, please!
What's the matter with you? Can't you do anything right?
Hey, wait! This isn't funny! Open up!
Finley believes the ritual keeps him young and successful, and Reggie is complicit, motivated by the professor's promises of grade boosts and protection. With Stella trapped in the tomb, Finley blows an old horn to resurrect the decaying mummy.
Come on, let me out! This isn't funny, man!
Using her knowledge, Stella dresses in ceremonial attire to impersonate the reincarnation of Ramseth's lost love, convincing the mummy that she is the destined bride. This ruse spares her life as the mummy accepts her. Meanwhile, Reggie becomes greedy and demands a higher grade from Finley in exchange for his silence about the plot. When Finley refuses, Reggie threatens to expose them.
I believe I have you over a very large barrel here. And I bet that some of that stuff you have hoarded away downstairs is worth a small fortune.
You miserable little rat turd. Are you trying to blackmail me?
Just think of it as a last-minute renegotiation.
Did you see me pour both drinks from the same decanter? No, of course not. How could you? You weren't paying attention as usual.
Son of a bitch.
Reggie, how embarrassing. You look like the poster boy for Depends.
In a cruel act of vengeance, Finley embalms Reggie's internal organs alive, killing him gruesomely, a moment of dark poetic justice as Reggie's betrayal leads to his horrific demise, while Stella uses what she learned in class to turn the tables on Finley.
No, it's okay.
You know, there was something else you said in class. About how jealous Ramseth was. Let's see if you were right.
No, don't, Stella.
Oh, Professor Finley, one little kissy-wissy for your favorite
No, Stella.
Your favorite student.
No.
Look what I found.
No.
Stella, having survived the horrors of the tomb, is shown turning in a class project, showing that she might not have escaped with her sanity.
What's going on?
My name is Detective Connors, Miss Bishop.
Is there something wrong?
I'm afraid so. It's about your class project.
Did I get a good grade?
Now, let's go, Stella. We'll talk about it downtown.
Creep course is adapted from The Haunt of Fear number 23. The original comic told a fairly straightforward tale. A college professor, obsessed with ancient Egypt, manipulates a student into a deadly ritual to awaken a mummy. The TV version keeps that skeleton, but fleshes it out with added twists and deeper character dynamics. In the episode, a shy student named Stella, played by Nina Simasco, is invited to a private after-hours study session by her professor, Finley, who harbors a dark obsession. He intends to use her as a sacrificial pawn in a ritual to resurrect a long-dead pharaoh. But there's more going on. Reggie, a seemingly helpful student played by Anthony Michael Hall, is also part of the setup. While it's important to acknowledge that actor Jeffrey Jones, who plays Professor Finley, has a controversial real-life history, I want to be clear that the focus here is on the episode's story, its themes, and the strong performances of the cast. The show's version adds depth, suspense, and a satisfying reversal, elevating a simple comic plot into a tense, character-driven piece with some great makeup work, especially on the pharaoh Ramseth. It's a highlight of Season 5 and a strong example of how the series could reinterpret EC's original tales for a more modern audience. Our final segment is from an episode called On a Deadman's Chest, from Season 4, Episode 3, originally airing on June 27, 1992. Our tale unfolds in the gritty world of rock and roll, focusing on the hard rock band Exorcist. The band is fronted by the egotistical and volatile lead singer, Danny Darwin. Danny's abrasive personality and controlling nature often puts him at odds with his bandmates, especially guitarist Nick Bosch. Tensions escalate when Nick marries Scarlett, a poised and intelligent woman whom Danny perceives as a threat to the band's unity. During a live performance, Danny publicly mocks Nick's marriage, dragging Scarlett on stage and making derogatory remarks.
Doesn't get too pussy with because sometimes Miss Scarlett here thinks she run this band. I'll tell you what, let's get this bitch off the stage.
This public humiliation leads to a backstage altercation where Nick confronts Danny about his behavior. Danny dismisses Nick's concerns, further straining their relationship. Later, in the band's dressing room, Danny encounters a seductive groupie named Vendetta. She entices him by revealing a snake tattoo that appears to move on her skin. Intrigued, Danny inquires about the tattoo artist responsible for such lifelike work. Vendetta agrees to introduce him to the artist, Farouche, in exchange for a sexual favor. The next day, Vendetta takes Danny to Farouche's parlor. Farouche is an enigmatic figure who believes that tattoos should reflect the true nature of the individual. Danny requests a tiger tattoo, symbolizing strength and dominance. However, Farouche insists on choosing the design himself, stating that he brings out what's inside a person. Upon completion, Danny is horrified to find a large, detailed portrait of Scarlett inked across his chest. Furious, he storms out, refusing to pay.
What the hell is this?
You like it?
It's Scarlett. That'll put you up to this, man?
Told you your skin tells a story.
How could you do this to me, man?
What about my money?
You asshole!
Back at the band's shared residence, Scarlett confronts Danny about his unprofessional behavior and its impact on the band. Danny accuses her of trying to break up the group, further deepening the animosity between them. Desperate to remove the unwanted tattoo, Danny consults a plastic surgeon. The procedure leaves his chest raw and scarred, but the image of Scarlett persists, haunting him. Vendetta suggests that if he can't remove the tattoo, he should eliminate the source, Scarlett herself.
If you can't get rid of the tattoo, at least you can get rid of her.
Danny devises a sinister plan. He finds reconciliation with Nick and agrees to perform at their next gig. However, during the show, Danny sneaks away and confronts Scarlett in the bathroom. In a fit of rage, he murders her, believing this act will free him from her influence. After the performance, Danny meets with Vendetta, boasting about his deed. He removes the bandage from his chest, expecting relief, but instead, the tattoo has transformed into a grotesque image of Scarlett's bloodied face. Vendetta, however, sees the original, unblemished tattoo, indicating that the horror is personal to Danny. As Danny prepares for another performance, he experiences intense pain and notices movement beneath his shirt. On stage, the pain becomes unbearable, and he flees, seeking solace in a mirror. There, he witnesses the tattoo come to life, culminating in a gruesome and fatal climax.
That's right, Nikki.
I killed her twice, man. Fucking bitch won't get under my skin anymore. No way, man. Fucking way. No way, man. Never.
On a Deadman's Chest is based on Tales from the Crypt number 38. In the comic, the story involves a man who receives a strange tattoo that gradually leads him to ruin. The show updates the setting to the early 90s rock scene. Danny, played by Yul Vasquez, is the front man in a rising rock band. After a drunken night out, he gets a tattoo from a seductive, mysterious woman named Vendetta. The tattoo, an image of his bandmate's wife, begins to move, bleed, and slowly unravels his sanity. Unlike the comic where the tattoo is symbolic, the episode makes it supernatural. Directed by none other than William Friedkin of The Exorcist fame, the episode carries a gritty, aggressive tone. It explores themes of jealousy, self-destruction, and the toxic dynamics in creative partnerships. The tattoo becomes a literal and metaphorical infection, eating away at the band's success in Danny's mind. While the comic was more of a quick morality tale, the episode leans heavily into body horror and rock and roll paranoia. Friedkin's direction gives it a cinematic feel. Each of these episodes takes the skeleton of its comic book origin and adds flesh, blood, and plenty of gore. Transforming mid-century horror morality plays into character-driven, psychological nightmares. And I, for one, absolutely love these stories. Our first story is titled Lower Berth, from Season 2, Episode 13, originally airing on July 3rd, 1990. Our story opens on a dark, bustling carnival. In a dimly lit tent of a traveling sideshow, the audience quickly gathers. Mr. Feely is presenting to the crowd, building hype. He first introduces Fanny, the fat lady, or an average woman from West Virginia. Then the Littles, a family of little people. Finally, he brings out his star attraction, Enoch, a two-faced man. Once revealed, the crowd gasps at the sight of him. He is forced to stay locked in a cage for all to stare and point at. This sideshow is a grim reflection of the era's fascination with human anomalies, and Enoch's life is one of isolation, exploitation, and forced imprisonment. Feely notices that Enoch keeps escaping his cage and chastises his handler, a man named Sickles. Feely warns that if Enoch escapes again, both of them will be forced into retirement. Sickles argues that Enoch is the only thing keeping the freak show from being like all the others. But Feely reveals he knows Sickles has been keeping a secret.
Enoch is special. Enoch is dying. Did you really think you could bribe the company doctor to keep it from me? Well, apparently your freak isn't the only one with two faces, is he?
After their heated argument, Sickles is approached by a shady businessman, Dr. Zachary Kling, who offers a new attraction, a 4,000-year-old Egyptian mummy named Myrna. Kling claims he won the mummy in a poker game and suggests it could be a lucrative addition to the show. Feely, always eager for profit, agrees. Sickles notices the jewels around the mummy's neck. Dr. Kling says the only rule is that the jewels stay in place, due to a possible curse. Myrna is unveiled to the public, and her presence captivates both the audience and the performers. Enoch, in particular, is drawn to her, finding solace in her silent company. Soon after, Sickles discovers that Myrna was not won in a card game at all. She was stolen. Sickles confronts Dr. Kling in a private tent. During their argument, Sickles says he'll take her jewels, and Kling can leave with his stolen mummy. Kling warns him that anyone who tries to remove the jewels from Myrna's neck will be cursed, castrated, or even killed. As Sickles goes to leave, tempted by the priceless jewels, Kling tries to stop him. In the struggle, Sickles accidentally stabs Kling with a pair of garden shears. Kling falls to the ground dead. Thinking fast, Sickles comes up with a devious plan. Sickles then enters the tent where Enoch and Myrna are kept. He unlocks Enoch's cage and leaves the shears by the entrance, intending to frame him for Kling's death. Sickles then takes Myrna's necklace. In a fit of rage, Enoch grabs the shears and attacks, castrating Sickles.
Bloody boy.
Myrna's eyes open, showing she might not be just a mummy after all. Later, Mr. Feely goes to introduce Enoch to a new group of onlookers, only to pull back the curtain and find the cage empty. The crowd murmurs in disappointment. He tries to shift their attention to Myrna, but when he pulls back her curtain, the audience is horrified. Sickles' corpse is revealed, the shears still buried in his torso. A year later, a policeman visits Feely, telling him they have found Enoch and Myrna, and that Feely really needs to come take a look. Together, they enter a damp, dark cave where they discover Enoch dead, his lifeless body wrapped lovingly around Myrna. The two men recoil in disgust at the implications and leave. The camera pans away to slowly reveal a baby crypt keeper. No more than a few months old, he stares into the camera in confusion as the screen fades to black. Lower Berth is directly based on Tales from the Crypt issue 33. In the original comic, Enoch wasn't just a deformed man like in the show. He was actually a two-headed mutant. The carnival owner in the comic was more of a generic cruel showman, but the episode gives us a fully fleshed out sleazeball in the form of Mr. Sickles. The comic played the mummy and Enoch's love story as a quick detail for shock value, while the show slows things down and makes Enoch's story more tragic. The comic ends abruptly with the reveal that their love produced the Crypt Keeper, while the episode delivers a 1-2 punch: the relationship itself and the reveal of the baby keeper. This episode was directed by Kevin Yeager, the creator of both the Crypt Keeper puppet and the Chucky puppet from the Child's Play franchise, which explains why the baby keeper looks a lot like a little Chucky. Overall, I have to say I really enjoyed this episode. It was a nice, simple story of comeuppance with a bit of heart and soul to go along with the horror. Plus, the little baby crypt keeper is just the icing on the cake when it comes to this story. I leave out a lot in these recaps, and this episode is well worth the watch in its entirety. Our second story is titled The Switch, from the second episode of Season 2, originally airing on April 21st, 1990. Our story opens on an elderly man named Carlton Webster. He's wealthy, lonely, and hopelessly in love. He finds himself infatuated with a young woman named Linda. Despite his affluence, Carlton is aware that his advanced age makes him an unlikely suitor in Linda's eyes. Determined to win her affection, he decides to conceal his wealth and propose marriage, hoping that she will love him for who he is rather than his fortune. However, Linda gently rejects his proposal, citing their age difference as a significant barrier. Heartbroken but not deterred, Carlton becomes obsessed with the idea of regaining his youth to make himself more appealing to Linda. He says he'll do anything it takes to make her happy.
I guess I've had this old face a long time. But not going to let that keep us apart.
What do you mean?
I'll do anything it takes to make you happy. Anything.
Seeking a solution, Carlton visits a plastic surgeon, who tells him he could take 5 to 10 years off his face. Carlton says it's not enough. He insists he wants to look even younger. In fact, he wants to look 30 years old again. The doctor relents and gives him a referral to another doctor who is more capable of giving Carlton the results he's looking for. We cut to a dark manor. Through flashes of lightning, the new doctor is revealed. We're never told his name, only what he can do, but there's a big price: $1 million. Carlton is stunned at the price tag, but the doctor explains that the procedure itself is only $100,000. The other $900,000 is for the face that will be replacing his. A young man named Hans. After a short conversation, Carlton agrees and the procedure begins. When he wakes up and looks in the mirror, Carlton says it isn't what he expected. The doctor assures him that once everything heals, it will look great. Carlton asks about Hans, and the doctor says he's already up and about, but will be kept around in case he's needed again. Puzzled, Carlton asks why he would need him again.
Here is Hans.
Oh, he's around. I'm going to keep him here just in case we need him again.
Why would we need him again?
You never know, do you?
Days later, Carlton shows up at Linda's, sporting his new younger face. Linda's reaction is far less than what Carlton was hoping for. She points out that his body is still old and decrepit. A look of shock creeps across Carlton's new face. But of course, willing to do anything for Linda's love, Carlton returns to the doctor. This time, he requests a new torso to match his face. The doctor reveals he can do it, but this time it will cost $2 million. The sticker shock leaves Carlton upset and in disbelief, but he relents and goes through with a second surgery. He again meets up with Linda. The two go for a romantic walk on the beach. Just as they are about to swim, they go to change clothes. It's revealed that Carlton still has old man legs, which once again puts Linda off.
Let's go. What's wrong?
It's your legs. They're so scrawny and old. Look at the sagging skin and the veins.
Carlton returns to the doctor yet again, who proposes a radical procedure that will make Carlton's transformation complete. The cost is steep, $3 million. Carlton says $3 million is all the money he has left, but reluctantly agrees. The final procedure is a success, and now Carlton is fully transformed into a younger man. He goes to visit Linda, only to find she has moved away. The building manager gives him her new address. Carlton rushes over, knocks on her door, and confident she'll finally say yes, he proposes. But Linda tells him she is already married. Linda reveals what she was truly looking for in a man was wealth and stability. It becomes clear her interest lies more in material gain than in genuine affection. She introduces her new husband, Hans, now living in Carlton's old body. The episode concludes with a poignant reflection on the consequences of vanity and the pursuit of superficial desires. Carlton's quest for youth and love led him to forsake his true self and his fortune, only to find that the woman he longed for could have been his, for the right price all along. But he spent all his money on his transformations. Hans laughs at Carlton as the screen fades to black.
While the episode The Switch closely follows the 1954 comic story of the same name, it appeared in the comic Tales from the Crypt, issue number 45, there are some notable differences. The comic presents the story in a darker, more grotesque style, focusing tightly on the body swap twist and the consequences of greed and vanity. The television adaptation, directed by Arnold Schwarzenegger, expands the story by adding more depth to the characters, exploring their motivations, and visually emphasizing the horror and humor through makeup, effects, and cinematography. Essentially, the episode keeps the core premise of Carlton Webster swapping bodies to win the affection of a younger woman, but fleshes it out for a more cinematic, character-driven experience. Arnold himself even appears in the opening of the episode, giving the keeper some lifting tips.
It's disgusting what people will do to stay young.
What's the matter with you? Want to keep that 90-pound corpse for the rest of your death? Keep pumping. I tell the story.
Overall, it's a fun episode, and little me back in the 90s seeing Arnold on Tales from the Crypt had me geeking out a bit. Rick Rossovich, most known for being in Top Gun as Slider and as one of Arnold's victims in the original Terminator, appears as Hans and later Carlton. Arnold asked for him to play the role specifically due to their friendship on the set of the Terminator, and Rick accepted. William Hickey, being a fan of the EC comics growing up, jumped at the chance to film an episode. He was actually double booked filming the Cat from Hell segment on the Tales from the Dark Side movie in late September, then filming The Switch in early October of 1989, with The Switch airing in April of 1990 and Tales from the Dark Side hitting theaters that May. He's near and dear to a lot of horror fans' hearts. He also voiced Dr. Finkelstein in The Nightmare Before Christmas and appeared in an episode of The Outer Limits. He was Uncle Lewis in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and of course he played Andre in The Puppet Master. I have no doubt he was a part of all our childhoods.
Our final story is titled The Thing from the Grave, from the 6th episode of Season 2, originally airing on May 8th, 1990. Our story opens on a man frantically driving down a forest road at night. His car comes to a screeching stop when he sees a man in his headlights. We find out the man driving is Devlin Cates, and the man standing in his way is Mitch Bruckner. Devlin asks if she's okay. Bruckner responds by saying yes, but he wishes he could say the same about Devlin, before pulling out a gun and firing.
Wish I could say the same for you, big guy. Oh. Tell me something, is that the shoulder she used to cry on? Or was it the other one? Oh.
Devlin runs through the woods to try and escape, but trips at a freshly dug grave. Bruckner picks him up, shoots him several more times, and tosses him into the hole. He then begins shoveling dirt on Devlin. Before we see the conclusion, we flash back to how this all started. We're back in Devlin's studio as Stacy, an aspiring model, is introduced during a photo shoot. Her photographer, Devlin, is immediately taken by her beauty and charm. Despite the professional setting, there's a palpable chemistry between them. As the shoot progresses, Stacy's abusive boyfriend and manager, Bruckner, arrives unannounced. His domineering presence casts a shadow over the session, making both Stacy and Devlin uncomfortable. Bruckner's controlling nature is evident as he belittles Devlin and asserts his authority over Stacy.
Stacy wants to make you really proud of her. Isn't that right? Right. Okay, and we're under just a little bit of a time pressure right here.
Right.
So go out and get yourself a little bit of coffee, okay?
Are you suggesting that I'm making Stacy nervous?
No.
Because I'm not making her nervous, you understand? If anybody's making her nervous, I think it's you. Because you're hitting on her every 2 seconds, you understand what I'm saying? I got an idea. Why don't you take this nice long lens of yours, get it nice and covered with Vaseline, and shove it up your fucking ass! Get some shots to the inside of your asshole, hot shot.
After the shoot, Devlin expresses concern for Stacy's well-being, offering her a place to stay if she ever feels unsafe. Touched by his kindness, Stacy accepts the offer, and they share a tender moment, hinting at a budding romance. Later, Stacy returns to Devlin's apartment, visibly shaken and sporting a bruise. She confides in him about Bruckner's violent tendencies and the abuse she endures. Devlin reassures her, giving her a necklace as a token of his promise to protect her. The necklace, a gift from Devlin's grandmother, is said to possess the power to make any vow spoken while wearing it come true. This supernatural element adds a layer of intrigue to their relationship. Meanwhile, Bruckner becomes aware of Stacy's growing affection for Devlin. Consumed by jealousy and possessiveness, he lures Devlin out days later with a call, claiming Stacy is in trouble at their cabin. This sets the stage for the earlier deadly encounter. In a fit of rage, Bruckner shoots Devlin, buries him alive, and leaves him for dead. He then ties up Stacy, talking to himself as he prepares to exact revenge for her infidelity. But outside, Devlin's body reanimates. He emerges from the makeshift grave where Bruckner buried him. Driven by his vow to protect Stacy, Devlin shuffles toward the cabin. Inside, Mitch hears eerie sounds and steps outside to investigate. Upon seeing Devlin's decaying form, Mitch attempts to shoot him, but the bullets have no effect. In desperation, Bruckner flees into the woods, with Devlin in pursuit. The chase leads them back to the grave, where Bruckner trips and falls in. Devlin, using his undead strength, pulls Mitch deeper into the grave, burying them both and ensuring Stacy's safety. Before Bruckner succumbs, Devlin inscribes, "She's mine," on a nearby rock in Bruckner's blood. He then buries Bruckner alive with himself, making sure Stacy can now live a safe life, free from her tormentor.
No! No! Run! I'm not dead! What are you doing?
This story was adapted from Tales from the Crypt, issue number 22. The comic and the show share the same basic premise, a love triangle gone deadly, with someone returning from the grave, but the details differ. In the comic, the main characters are Bill, who's hopelessly in love with Laura, and Jim, Laura's true love. When Bill murders Jim out of jealousy, Jim, even from the grave, keeps his promise to protect Laura. It's subtle, twisted, and very much in that classic EC comic style. The TV episode changes things quite a bit. We get Mitch, the abusive boyfriend and Devlin, the rival he murders, but the dynamics are more dramatic and visual. Devlin literally comes back from the grave, making the supernatural element front and center. The TV version also adds more tension and visual horror, which makes sense. It's a show, so they wanted to punch it up for the audience. Even the characters' names and roles changed. Bill and Jim became Mitch and Devlin, giving the story a slightly more modern twist for TV. While the comic leans on dark humor and a twist ending, the episode emphasizes suspense and shock with cinematic flair. Terry Hatcher portrays the supermodel Stacy. This role came 3 years before Hatcher rose to fame as Lois Lane in Lois and Clark. So, at this point, she was still carving out her TV career. The early exposure on Tales from the Crypt was a great stepping stone in her filmography, and cemented her name in the hearts and minds of everybody in the 90s. You might recognize Miguel Ferrer, who is most famous for playing Bob Morton in RoboCop and Dr. Garrett Macy in Crossing Jordan. Miguel was widely regarded as a kind, generous, and genuinely good-hearted person, definitely not the prick he plays in many of his roles. It still held true that, in my opinion, the best bad guys are played by genuinely good people. Our first story is titled Only Sin Deep, from Season 1, Episode 4, originally airing on June 14th, 1989. Our story opens on a wet night in New York City. We fall on Sylvia Vane, a narcissistic prostitute working late nights in the red light district with her friend Raven. Raven's pimp, named Smitty, comes to collect. He tries to enlist Sylvia as one of his working girls, but Sylvia sees herself as a solo enterprise. After buffing Smitty's advances, Raven and Sylvia see a rich man and his wife entering a building across the street. Raven sneers and says every night is party night for the rich. Sylvia says she's meant for that kind of life, making her friend laugh. She continues by asking what that woman has that she doesn't, and Raven snidely remarks, "A rich man." Sylvia says it won't be that way for long before luring Smitty into an alley. She makes it seem like she's taking him up on his offer, but pulls a gun on him, robbing him of his jewelry. Smitty grabs her arms, and in the struggle, he's shot in the stomach multiple times, killing him nearly instantly. Sylvia walks away, saying for her it was strictly business. She walks out into the street, her ill-gotten gains in hand, smiling at Raven, telling her she's now a free agent as she walks past. Sylvia goes to a pawn shop to sell the pimp's valuables, saying they belong to a friend that got run over. In the middle of the shop's owner looking over the items, a woman comes in with her face covered in a veil. She tosses insults at the man whose name we find out is Joe, and begins smashing stuff off the counter before storming out. Sylvia just laughs, but her smile comes to an end when Joe recognizes that the jewelry is stolen and that he wants nothing to do with it. Sylvia argues and storms out, but Joe stops her and suggests another business deal. He offers her $10,000 in cash for her beauty. Sylvia smiles at the idea. She sits in the chair, counting the money, overjoyed at the idea of having so much money for a simple plaster mold. But Joe warns her this isn't just a mold of her face. He'll be capturing her beauty, but that she has 4 months to pay him back if she wants to retrieve it. Sylvia laughs and agrees, and Joe begins to pour the plaster onto her face. She begins wincing in disgust, and the camera pans over, showing the molds of other women who are seemingly looking on with their expressions frozen in time. Sylvia walks out of the pawn shop with a snide grin plastered across her face, thinking that she scored a major payday for almost no work on her end. Joe is shown doing an incantation over his new plaster mold, blowing dust into the air. He talks to a person unseen, telling them that it's almost time, and that he nearly has everything he needs to make her look just as she once did, before the camera pans to show a decomposed woman in a wedding gown sitting up in a coffin. Sylvia uses the cash to get a makeover, then scours through multiple fashion magazines, trying to find the perfect outfit. She tries on many before finding the perfect one. She's seen getting out of a limo by Raven, who looks on in disbelief. She crashes one of Ronnie Price's parties, exiting the elevator looking her best. She sees Ronnie Price and begins flirting from afar. She draws him in like a fish on a hook. They talk on Ronnie's balcony. She fakes like she's going to leave, and Ronnie succumbs to her flirtations, and they start a relationship. Nearly 4 months later, Sylvia has everything she ever wanted, but she begins to notice that she starts showing signs of aging. She stares at herself in the mirror, noticing the small imperfections. Ronnie says she's worrying for nothing, and that she looks beautiful, before kissing her goodbye and leaving on his business trip.
She continues to worry, even going to visit a doctor with a black veil covering her face. The doctor rules out many things. Frustrated, Sylvia removes the veil and sternly asks, "If nothing is abnormal, then what's wrong with my face?" He tells her that it appears that her face is aging at an accelerated rate. He stresses the need for her to remain calm and asks her to think back about anything in her recent history that might have caused this. She remembers her deal with Joe. It comes back to her in flashes. The woman smashing up his shop, him offering her money for her beauty, the plaster molding. She gets up and runs from the doctor's office and back to the pawn shop. She walks in, screaming at a woman to leave. She slams her ticket onto the table and gives Joe back the $10,000 plus 12%. But Joe points out that she didn't read the ticket, saying that the deadline is passed by 1 day and that she's too late. She pulls a gun on Joe, demanding that he give her beauty back. Joe reluctantly agrees, but says the price to redeem her beauty is now $100,000. Just then, a cop walks into the pawn shop and Sylvia stows her gun. The cop is there to eat lunch with his friend Joe. Sylvia leaves in silence. She returns to Ronnie's lavish apartment, and in desperation, Sylvia steals as many valuables as she can. Her aging has become more rapid, and she appears older every time she looks in the mirror. Ronnie shows up. He's about to call the police when he sees Sylvia, who has aged seemingly years since he's last seen her. So much so that Ronnie doesn't recognize her and thinks she is a desperate homeless woman trying to rob him. Ronnie picks up the phone and calls the police. As the phone rings, Sylvia looks on in anger. She pulls out a gun and shoots him multiple times. Sylvia runs back to Joe's pawn shop but finds the business closed, with all the doors locked. She pounds on the doors until she breaks one of the locks and rushes inside. She finds her face mold in the back of the shop, surrounded by candles. She opens the door to reveal Joe's wife. She's no longer a decomposed husk, but instead she's now a beautiful woman. Joe taps her on the shoulder, jump scaring her. Joe smiles and says that's how his wife used to look. He says that he needs other women's beauty to keep her looking that way. He remarks that he believes it's a small price to pay. She pushes Joe back and dumps the bag of jewels onto the table. She says all that is worth more than $100,000. She removes her veil and demands her beauty back. He says he could do that if that's what she really wants, revealing a newspaper with her photo on it, saying that she's wanted for the murder of Ronnie Price. The policeman friend of Joe's returns with coffee. Walking into the pawn shop, they discuss Ronnie Price's murder, noting that the weapon was left at the crime scene with fingerprints. The cop says it's as good as a signed confession, saying the moment she shows her face anywhere, she'll end up going straight to the electric chair. Sylvia listens as she caresses the mold of her face. She hugs it close to her as she slowly leaves out the back door. Sylvia flees the shop and crosses the street. It's there that she bumps into Raven, making her drop the mask. It shatters into pieces on the ground. Raven, not recognizing her, insults Sylvia, calling her old and ugly. Sylvia drops to her knees, frantically trying to pick up the pieces as the screen fades to black.
When it comes to Only Sin Deep, the story was adapted from A Tale in the Haunt of Fear, issue number 24. The TV adaptation expands the base idea into something much darker and more tragic. Sylvia Vane isn't just vain. As her name implies, she's a woman using her looks as a survival tool in a harsh, class-driven world. Most of the story remains the same, aside from taking place in a different time period, with the comic set in the 1950s and the show taking place in the 1980s. The biggest difference, however, is the ending. In the comic, once the beauty is gone, that's essentially the punchline. In the show, Sylvia tries to fight back, even resorting to murder, but it doesn't matter. There's no loophole, no escape, and no mercy. The TV version turns a simple EC cautionary tale into a bleak statement about how power, youth, and beauty are temporary, and how the world discards people once those things are gone. Where the comic ends quickly and cruelly, the episode lets the horror of her actions and her fate linger. This episode is often confused with the similarly titled Only Skin Deep, which I previously covered and mentioned as one of my all-time favorites of the series. Only Sin Deep was written for television by Fred Decker and directed by Howard Deutsch. The casting of Leah Thompson as Sylvia Vane caught a lot of people off guard at the time, with her most famous roles being the Back to the Future films. She went completely against type by playing a character who's brash, harsh, and uses vulgar language. Then there's Britt Leach, who played the pawn shop owner, and to me is most recognizable from the comedy classic The Great Outdoors, where he played a man who was struck by lightning 66 times. Actually, by the end of the movie, it's 67 times. Overall, it's a great story and has that signature EC Comics twist that us horror fans love. And being only the 4th episode ever of the show, it's a strong early entry that helps lure viewers into watching even more episodes in the long-running series. Our second story is titled Halfway Horrible from Season 5, Episode 12, originally airing on December 1st, 1993. Our story starts off in a brightly lit morgue, where Roger Lassen, the owner of a large chemical company, is asked by the police to identify the body of his business associate named Dan King. The detective asks if they worked for the same company. Roger says that he didn't just work with him. He co-founded their company. The detective notices a glowing blue liquid pooling at the bottom of the table. Roger reveals that it's Xthion B, a powerful new preservative his company is about to introduce. Roger asks what happened. The detective reveals that Dan injected 40 cc's of the chemical into his neck, grimly joking that the coroner told him that Dan's head won't rot for at least 100 years. He then asks what's in the chemical that makes it glow like that. Roger reveals it's a compound only found in the rainforest. The detective hands Roger a bag, saying he found it in his pocket. Roger turns it over to reveal the message, "I've not forgotten or forgiven," written neatly on the torn paper. The detective says they thought it was a suicide note, but remarks that the handwriting isn't matching with anything else he's written. Roger pulls back the sheet, revealing symbols on Dan's chest. He puts the cover back in disgust. The detective says someone drew it on him, probably after he died. Roger asks for an aspirin as he looks over a photo of 4 men handed to him by the detective. Roger points out that the photo was taken in Brazil. He identifies Dan and himself along with 2 other men named Kevin and Alex, before revealing that Alex died in Brazil not too long after the photo was taken. The detective asks if they have any shared enemies. Roger reminds him that he's the president of an international chemical company, and that enemies are listed in the job description. He continues to ask if he knows of anybody with access to the chemical that would want Dan or him dead. Roger looks at the photo and remarks, "Not for a very long time." He then flashes back to 6 years earlier. A tribal man walks around a fire and hands Roger a bowl of the glowing blue fluid. He feeds it to an older man in a box, the blue liquid spilling down the man's chest as he drinks. Dan says what they're doing is crazy, and Roger reminds him that they're down here to learn, as he uses black paint to write symbols on the man's chest. Kevin remarks that they're going to hell. Roger laughs and says that may be, but what a ride it's going to be, as he continues to finish the symbol. The other tribesmen put a lid on the casket and lower it into the ground. The group says that what they're doing is evil. Roger watches on, saying everyone has an evil side. They just need to keep it on a tight leash. Back in the present, Roger returns home. He flicks on the lights to reveal his furniture has been overturned and someone spray painted "I've not forgotten or forgiven" in bold black on his living room wall. He calls the detective over, and they talk again. Roger chews on more aspirin, pissed off and saying that the problem is that they know where he lives. The detective asks how he knows it's a he. Roger says it doesn't matter if it's a him or a her. What matters is that they know where he lives. The detective advises that Roger get out of town for a few days and allow them to track down the person who did all this. Roger refuses, saying that he waited years for the FDA to approve Xthion B, and it's only about a week away from being unveiled. The detective advises against it, but says that it's his life before going to leave. But he stops and turns around. He asks Roger again if there's anybody that comes to mind that would want to do this. Roger shakes his head and says nobody. But after the cop leaves, there's a telling look on his face, revealing that he has a name. The person just isn't alive. We again visit the past. Kevin and Dan find out how the blue liquid is made and make a batch themselves. Roger returns and is excited to see it glowing in the vial. Roger says the local police are going to try to bust them on visa charges, and that they need to leave as soon as possible. Dan asks where Alex is, and Roger says he went back to town and is going to catch a flight back tomorrow. Kevin and Dan question him
but Roger blows them off, saying that unless they want to get caught, they've got to pack up and leave Brazil now. Before walking off, Dan asks where he's going, and Roger shouts back that he'll catch up later. Roger goes back to the fire and is handed a glowing blue bowl by a tribesman. They lift the box only to reveal that now Alex is inside, dazed and confused. Roger reveals to Alex that the tribe said that they needed a trade for their secrets, and Roger reveals that he offered up Alex as the trade. Roger forces the liquid into Alex's mouth as he begs and pleads with him not to do this. After emptying the bowl, the lid is placed over Alex, who screams and cries as he's placed into the ground. Back in modern times, Roger gives an interview on TV about Staired In. He shows the interviewer 2 apples, saying that they were picked years ago and have been treated with the chemical. He takes a bite and invites the interviewer to follow. After taking a bite, the interviewer says it tastes fresh. Roger remarks, as fresh as if it was just picked from the tree. He goes on to say that it's not limited to foods, that in fact the wood used to build houses will never rot, and that clothing will never fade. The interviewer jokes about how much money he'll save on suits before wrapping up the interview. Roger exits the room and pops another aspirin. A co-worker of Roger reveals that the FDA is holding off approval of the chemical. He says they are a bit freaked out after finding out about the death of Dan. Roger, on a short fuse, says he doesn't care how he does it, but the chemical needs to be approved and to not take no for an answer. Or as he puts it, fuck Dan. In Roger's office, his co-worker asks him to see a doctor. Roger says he's fine as he requests his assistant to get him more aspirin. His co-worker says that he should find and talk to Kevin. Roger says they haven't spoken in years. The co-worker reminds him that Kevin and him are the only 2 who know about the origins of his soon-to-be-released chemical, and that he might be needed if they want to sway the FDA into a rapid approval. Later, Roger goes to visit Kevin. He goes to knock but notices the door is slightly open. He enters, and the apartment appears empty. He notices a glowing blue liquid dripping onto a plate in the living room. He walks in to find Kevin dead with a syringe in his neck filled with Staired In, and the same note written on the other half of torn yellow notebook paper. I've not forgotten or forgiven, written in the same neat cursive as before. Roger tears off the note and runs back to his office building. He walks into the boardroom and sees his sleazy coworker sitting with his feet up. He yells that Kevin's dead before grabbing the man by the collar and pushing him against a wall. He accuses the man of setting him up to make it look like he killed him before throwing him across the room into some potted plants. He accuses him of orchestrating everything that's gone wrong before brutally killing him. Suddenly, Roger hears slow clapping. It's revealed to be coming from a decomposed Alex. It's unclear if this is actually happening or only going on in Roger's mind. Alex asks if he caught the killer yet, laughing that he's shocked that Roger hasn't figured it out by now. He snags the yellow letter from Roger's front pocket and a handwritten note on a nearby desk. Alex says the handwriting matches, revealing that Roger is the killer. But Roger shakes his head in disbelief and uses a decorative weapon to stab and behead Alex's walking corpse. Later, Roger returns home and calls Dr. Benaloy for a house call. The good doctor shows up and reveals that Roger isn't sick, he's cursed, saying that the particular curse is crafty. It turns a person's evil side into an active personality, and at such an advanced stage, curing it could end up killing Roger. But Roger, being beyond fed up with the situation, says he doesn't care and that he just wants it gone. The doctor agrees, and they start a ritual. The doors fling open and Benaloy glides in dressed in full tribal garb. Roger screams in fright. Later, Roger calls his assistant, telling her to bring him 200 cc's of Staired In and a syringe to his house. She says that the cops are there and want to talk to him. He says that he will, but he needs her to follow his instructions first. She shows up at his house with the chemical. She asks what this is all about. Roger says that Benaloy killed his evil half before it could take him over, but that his good half needs to be preserved. She flicks on the light and screams at the sight of him. It's implied that Roger had an extreme mental breakdown. There was no zombified Alex or Dr. Benaloy, and it was Roger who killed Kevin and Dan. He imagined everything. He then mutilated himself over the guilt of what he did to his friend Alex in Brazil, giving his two-faced nature a physical form. We see his grisly face as the screen fades to black.
Halfway Horrible was adapted from a story in The Vault of Horror, issue number 26. In the original EC comic story, Halfway Horrible is a straightforward shock piece built around a single grotesque idea, a man whose face is permanently split between handsome and hideous. The comic leans hard into visual irony. His disfigurement is treated as fate, something inflicted on him, and the horror comes from how society reacts to what it sees. Like many EC stories, the message is blunt and external. Appearances dictate how the world treats you, and cruelty follows deformity. The episode reworks that idea into something far more psychological. Instead of the deformity being purely physical, the show strongly implies that much of what we're seeing may not be real at all. Roger isn't just a victim of circumstance. He's deeply unstable and mentally disturbed. The episode suggests that his other half may be a projection of guilt, self-loathing, or a fractured identity, turning the story inward rather than outward. What was once a visual gag in the comic becomes a question of mental collapse. The biggest name in Halfway Horrible is Clancy Brown, an actor most people immediately recognize even if they don't know his name. Horror fans remember him as the Kurgan in Highlander, where he played one of the most unhinged and intimidating villains of the 80s. A whole different generation knows him as the voice of Mr. Krabs on SpongeBob SquarePants, while genre fans might also recognize him as Gus, one of the brutal antagonists from Pet Sematary 2, a film I'll be covering in the future. Seeing Brown in Tales from the Crypt works so well because he's always excelled at playing characters that feel dangerous, unstable, or just slightly off. That makes him a perfect fit for the psychological horror at the center of this story. Though the overall episode loses some people by the end, mainly due to confusion over whether what they're seeing should be taken at face value or interpreted as subtext, it's still a classic. Either way it's viewed, it remains effective, and further proves why Clancy Brown is a legend in this kind of storytelling. Then, of course, there's Cheech Marin. Most people know him for the stoner comedy movies he starred in with Tommy Chong. In this story, however, he plays the character straight, no jokes or humor, which is another signature twist of Tales from the Crypt. Take what's expected and turn it upside down. At this point in Marin's career, he was feuding with Tommy Chong and wanted to distance himself and branch out from doing strictly comedic roles. He went on to appear in many movies and TV shows, including a major role as Joe Dominguez in the TV series Nash Bridges. Cheech and Chong officially reunited as a performing duo in 2008, more than 20 years after their breakup in 1985. They put aside their long-standing creative differences to launch the Light Up America comedy tour, marking their first major reunion in decades. They are still close today, describing their relationship not as a friendship, but more like a brotherhood. Our final tale is titled Staired In Horror from Season 6, Episode 9, originally airing on December 14th, 1994. Our story opens on a dark night in the forest. A fugitive named Clyde is fleeing from a search party formed by the town sheriff looking for him. After getting clotheslined by a tree branch, Clyde happens upon an old white manor in the woods. He bangs on the door in a panic. An older woman answers, and Clyde says that he's hurt real bad and pleads with the woman to let him in and help him out. She says she would, but she's alone. Clyde feigns understanding and pretends to faint at the front door. The elderly woman, named Lillian, answers the door, and Clyde scuttles in. He slams the door shut and locks it, and tells Lillian that they are after him for loving one of their daughters, and will hurt him if they know he's here. Lillian says she'll call the town sheriff, and he'll settle everything down. Clyde says that it's the sheriff's daughter, and he's the one chasing him down. Lillian says she'll get rid of him, and goes to answer the door. The sheriff says they're looking for a fugitive that's in the area. He continues to say he has a tattoo on his neck and is a killer, one who preys upon the elderly. And in fact, earlier that day, Clyde beat an elderly man at the town gas station, who later died in the hospital. The sheriff describes Clyde, and Lillian lies and says that she hasn't seen anyone matching that description. He tells her to keep her doors and windows locked before exiting her porch with the other lawmen. She invites Clyde into the dining room, saying she wants to look at his forehead, but Clyde forcefully asks for the keys to her car. Lillian only laughs, saying she doesn't have one. In fact, she doesn't have a phone either. Clyde sneers as Lillian pours them a cup of brandy. Clyde raises an antique gun, about to bring it down on Lillian, when she says to put it down.
without so much as turning around. She says that she might be old but isn't foolish. She knows he's desperate, and whatever happened between him and that man he killed isn't her business. She reminds him that if he bashes her over the head and runs back out into the woods, he'll run right into the arms of the sheriff and his men. She continues to say that she hasn't had company in years and that he should spend the night, warning him not to do anything rash to her, as he'll need her help in finding his way out in the morning. He says she's old. What could she know? She shakes her head, telling him that everyone gets old. That's the way it's meant to be. Clyde denies it, saying he'll ride the sewer slide before he becomes old and useless like her. She just shakes her head and makes her way to the stairs. She jokes that she thinks it would be better if he stayed the night downstairs, commenting that she doesn't want a young buck like him to get the wrong idea, before laughing and wishing him good night. Once Lillian goes upstairs, Clyde steals an old pocket watch and plays with a Civil War sword, knocking over a candlestick holder and mockingly remarking that to win you gotta be strong, before hearing a young woman's voice upstairs. Clyde walks over and looks to the top of the steps to see a young, beautiful woman. Clyde asks her name and isn't shocked when he finds out her name is Lillian too, but she asks to be called Lily. Clyde goes to walk up the steps, but Lily stops him. She says that this old house has rules. Clyde says it's a good idea not to wake the old bat and asks Lily to join him downstairs. She agrees and tells him to make them a couple of highballs, and that she'll be right down. Clyde pours them a drink and takes a sip as Lily walks into the room. Clyde is hugged from behind and he goes to squeeze Lily's butt cheek, but instead squeezes Lillian's butt. Clyde jumps away, cursing the old woman. She says she's sorry and didn't mean to frighten him. Clyde pulls the sword on her, telling her to go get Lily and bring her back here. Scared, Lillian says she'll show her to him and walks away. As she walks up the steps, Clyde waits at the bottom. She stops at an old portrait of Lily, saying it was her first communion. Lillian takes a few more steps and shows Clyde the portrait of her husband. Clyde doesn't seem to notice that Lillian's hand looks younger and her hair is now less gray. He stands at the bottom of the steps listening to her talk. She turns and it's Lily. She continues to tell the story that her husband left one day, off to see the world, and left her at home alone. Clyde looks on in confusion as she continues to talk. She says a young man came to the door one day. She was so lonely that she let him in, but just as luck would have it, her husband came home. He found them in bed together and dragged the man out of the room and down the steps in a rage. She knew that her husband would kill the man, and she felt that it wasn't his fault. The young man didn't know she was married, so she shot her husband to save the young man, and in his dying words, her husband cursed her, saying that no young man will ever climb these stairs to her bed again, nor will she descend the stairs in a shape that pleases men. Clyde, laughing, asks how she does that and runs up the steps. Clyde gets halfway up and looks at himself in the mirror and sees that he's suddenly middle-aged. Clyde walks backward down the steps as Lily continues talking, saying that downstairs she's too old and he's too young, and upstairs he's too old and she's too young. Clyde recoils in horror and disbelief, but she meets him in the middle of the steps. She grabs his hands to show him that right here, they are both the same age. They begin to kiss passionately, but they're interrupted by the sheriff and lawmen again. Lily tells Clyde to go upstairs, telling him that they aren't looking for an old man. She'll let them in, and once they see an old man at the top of the steps, they'll be left alone. Clyde climbs the staircase and grows older as Lily descends the steps and also becomes old herself. She answers the door, and the sheriff says their dogs keep circling the house and that he believes that Clyde broke in and she's unaware of it. Lily lets them in, and the dog, picking up on Clyde's scent, tries to ascend the steps, but his fur grows gray and he begins whimpering. The dog can feel himself getting old and decides to turn back and return to the sheriff. The dog is so freaked out that it bolts from the sheriff's grip and runs out the front door. The sheriff apologizes and leaves quickly, but Clyde, fearing they will come upstairs, goes to the attic. Lily yells up to Clyde, saying that they left. She runs upstairs and becomes young again, following Clyde deeper into the house. She sees the door open to the steps leading up to the attic. Up there, Clyde is so old he can't move. Lily calls after him and climbs the steps to the attic. But just as it made him very old, it made Lily very young. The baby Lillian crawls toward Clyde as he grunts in horror, and the screen fades to black. When it comes to Staired In Horror, it's one of the shorter stories in Tales from the Crypt, but it packs a lot of creepy ingenuity into its runtime. The episode is based on a story from the Vault of Horror, issue number 23. Like many Crypt stories, it blends supernatural elements with a darkly ironic twist, and this one in particular plays with the idea of age and time in a very unique way. The cast is packed with recognizable faces from the 80s. Leading the episode as the fugitive Clyde is D.B. Sweeney, best known for his role as Travis Walton in Fire in the Sky, the extraterrestrial horror film based on a real-life alleged alien abduction. Sweeney brings a grounded sense of fear to Clyde, making his panic and desperation feel believable, even in such an outlandish scenario. Adding to the star power is R. Lee Ermey, who appears as the town sheriff. Best known as Sergeant Hartman in Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket, Ermey brings his signature commanding presence and over-the-top intensity to the role, even in this smaller part. It's fun to see an actor so closely associated with military roles pop up in a horror story, though any horror fan knows this wasn't his only step into the genre. Last but not least is Rachel Ticotin, who plays both Lillian and her younger counterpart, Lily. Ticotin is perhaps best known for her role as Melina, Arnold Schwarzenegger's love interest in Total Recall. Here, she explores a very different side of horror, playing a character who is nurturing, mysterious, and central to the episode's supernatural twist. One of the things that makes Staired In Horror stand out is its inventive use of practical effects. The staircase curse, aging characters as they move up or down, was achieved using clever makeup and camera angles, creating a surreal and unsettling visual experience. Even the sheriff's dog isn't spared from the aging effect, showing there's no mercy for anyone or anything. Ultimately, this episode is a perfect example of what made Tales from the Crypt so memorable. It combines dark humor, supernatural twists, and strong performances from recognizable actors. And while it may be shorter than some of the more sprawling episodes, it's compact, eerie, and effective. A story that lingers in your mind long after the credits roll. Our first story is titled The Secret, from Season 2, Episode 18, originally airing on July 31st, 1990. Our story starts on a stormy night inside an orphanage. Theodore, a young boy, is sneaking around the dark house. He slips past two women talking and enters the kitchen, where he eats some chicken and takes an apple. Theo hides under the table as the two women enter the dining room. They discuss him being nearly too old for adoption, and that they mustn't talk about what happened to his parents. Theo bumps into a table leg and drops his apple, which rolls across the floor, alerting Miss Hagstead to his presence. Hagstead drags the boy out from under the table and reprimands him for being up past bedtime, accusing him of listening in on their conversation. Hagstead is a slightly older, bitter woman who seems to take out her frustrations on the children of the orphanage. She tells Miss Heather to lock Theo in his room. Miss Heather is younger and much more understanding and pleasant. The children hold her in much higher regard, and she understands that Theo is a growing boy, and therefore likely hungrier than the smaller children. She gives him back the apple as she walks him back up to his room. Miss Heather tells Theo what will be for breakfast the next morning. The next morning, Miss Heather is panicked to find that Theo is gone from his room. Hagstead says it's not uncommon. He throws fits and runs off for hours. She seems lax about the lack of safety for the young boy, only stating that he'll come back and that they need to try and get rid of him. The front door swings open to reveal Theo standing in the doorway, barefoot and covered in dirt. Hagstead is stern again, telling him to get cleaned up and help with dishes in the kitchen. While the two boys wash dishes and tell jokes, Miss Heather comes in and says she has exciting news for Theo, telling the other boy to go play so they can talk in private. Miss Heather tells Theo that a family is coming to meet him that night, and that they are very excited to meet him. She reminds him to be on his best behavior, and explains what this could mean for him. Miss Heather is warm in her delivery, but Theo seems slightly sad. This could mean leaving behind the only life he has ever known. Later that night, Mr. and Mrs. Colbert meet Theo, stating he's perfect and that they'll take him. Theo slightly protests. Hagstead says she'll make tea and has Theo help her. In the kitchen, Hagstead again shows her mean side, yelling at the boy. Theo remains calm, grimacing at her anger, Her expression shifts from anger to fear when Theo asks about his real parents. She stutters, saying they died when he was a little boy. When Theo asks how they died, her fear deepens. Hagstead shakes it off, saying details aren't important. Knowing the boy is always hungry, she says the Colberts, though eccentric, can keep him well fed with sweets. This seems to change his mind reluctantly. With a sad face, he waves goodbye to his friends as he and the Colberts drive away. Later at the Colberts' house, Theo hardly explores before being barked at by a dog. Mrs. Colbert tells Theo that everything in the house is worth a lot of money, and their dog has been diligently trained to be overprotective of their collections, and that it would be best if he wouldn't touch anything. They show him his room, filled with toys and everything a young boy could ask for. Theo gratefully turns to thank them, only to see the Colberts walking away while their servant closes and ominously locks the bedroom door. Looking through the keyhole, Theo hears Mr. and Mrs. Colbert talking about how long they've waited. He asks why the door is locked, but the two walk down the hall, leaving his question unanswered. As they round the corner, their guard dog lunges at Theo's door, scaring him and making him question what Hagstead told them. A montage shows Theo playing, eating nothing but sweets and desserts, but he peers through the keyhole, wondering why he can't leave. He even grows tired of the sweet treats. Tobias drops off his lunch again, consisting entirely of sweets. Theo asks if Tobias can stay because he feels lonely. The two play cards together. Theo has flashbacks to happier times with Miss Heather and the other children. Just then, Mr. and Mrs. Colbert enter with a large birthday cake. Theo says it's not his birthday, but is thankful. Mrs. Colbert says her and her husband are going out for the evening. That night, while Theo is tucked into bed, he chats with Tobias. He asks about the Colberts, but Tobias is intentionally blunt and light on details. Tobias says he too was an orphan, though never adopted. Theo recalls a Tobias at the orphanage nicknamed Toby and asks if he can call him Toby from now on. Toby agrees, and Theo says he is happy to have him there. Toby is called away by the Colberts, and they say goodnight to each other before Toby leaves. In the middle of the night, Theo overhears the Colberts talking. Mrs. Colbert calls him their orphan delicacy. Theo pretends to sleep as they open his door. Mrs. Colbert says she can't wait much longer, telling her husband that once they get home, she'll reveal their secret. Later, when the Colberts leave, Toby rushes into Theo's room, waking him in a panic and urging him to leave. Theo is sluggish, saying his stomach hurts. As Theo and Toby enter the hall, they find Mrs. Colbert waiting, ominously and playfully, asking where they are rushing off to. Toby refuses to go through with their plan, and Mrs. Colbert says they haven't revealed their secret yet. Mrs. Colbert smiles, revealing her fangs, and Theo realizes that they're vampires who have been planning to feed on him. And Toby is attacked from behind by Mr. Colbert, receiving a bite on the neck. Theo leaps from the stairs and makes a desperate run. The guard dog and Colberts pursue him as he stumbles through the woods in panic, finally collapsing from exhaustion. The Colberts catch up to Theo with ease and begin taunting him, as if savoring the moment. But before they can attack, Theo proclaims he's got a secret of his own.
Now I know what happened to my parents.
I know why Miss Hagstead wanted to get rid of me. I have a secret too, Mrs. Colbert.
I'm sure you have, dear.
And mine is better than yours. I'm a werewolf. And I have an appetite for vampire.
After feeding on the Colberts, Theo returns to the orphanage with a message for Miss Hagstead.
Good evening, Miss Hagstead. Miss Heather. I'm home.
Back.
I know my secret, Miss Hagstead. And I think some things are going to change around here.
The Secret was the 18th episode of the second season, airing in midsummer of 1990. It was based on a story from Haunt of Fear, number 24. The The show didn't copy the comic word for word. It took the same core idea and expanded it into something a lot more atmospheric. In the original comic, the plot is pretty simple and straight to the point. A young orphan boy gets adopted by a wealthy couple who seem a little too perfect. Turns out they're vampires. They only took him in to fatten him up and drink his blood. But the big twist, the kid's actually a werewolf and he tears them apart instead. Classic EC Comics, short, brutal, and with that dark, ironic ending. When the TV show adapted it in 1990, they kept the same basic setup, the orphan, the rich adoptive parents, and the monster twist, but stretched it into a full 30-minute story. We get way more world building this time. There's the orphanage setting, where we see Theodore sneaking around and being labeled the weird kid. Then there's the Colbert's mansion, this cold, museum-like place where everything looks perfect but feels wrong. They spoil him with candy and gifts, but also keep him locked away at night. Eventually, Theodore discovers that his new parents are vampires, and just like in the comic, they plan to drink his blood. But before they can sink their teeth in, the full moon rises, and their sweet little boy transforms into a rage-filled werewolf and rips them to shreds. The core story stayed the same, but the TV version added names, characters, and a slow burn build-up that the short comic didn't have space for. The comic was more like a quick punchline. The episode turned it into a full horror fairy tale with atmosphere and tension. The butler Tobias was played by Larry Drake. Horror fans will recognize him as the killer in Dr. Giggles, and the sadistic mob boss Durant from Darkman. On screen he was chilling, but off screen, everyone who knew him said he was kind, thoughtful, and nothing like the monsters he played. In fact, the story allowed him to appear ghoulish, cold, and unfeeling, only to bond with Theo, even protecting him with his life. Overall, this episode is a slow burn. Most of the creepy stuff happens late in the story. Compared to a lot of Tales from the Crypt episodes, The Secret is surprisingly tame. There's not much gore, shock, or nudity. It plays out more like a gothic fairy tale than a splatter story. You've got vampires, a full moon, and that classic monster twist, but it's handled in a way that feels almost cozy, like a mashup of Oliver Twist and Hansel and Gretel, just with fangs and fur. Overall, it's an episode well worth watching. And to be fully open, the really cool shot of Mr. Mystical Bear gliding off the balcony to chase Theo, it honestly just tickles my geek brain for some reason. I think I rewatched that part like 4 or 5 times. It's just a cool, classically creepy shot.
Our second story is titled Comes the Dawn, from Season 6, Episode 13, originally airing on January 11th, 1995. The story begins in a smoky bar in snowy Alaska. The door swings open, and with the blustering winds, in steps Colonel Parker, followed by Sergeant Burroughs. The bartender, Mona, remarks that it's a bit too late in the hunting season for them to be there. Parker tells her they're looking for someone named Jerry, a hunting guide. Mona says she knows who Jerry is, and that she once called the cops herself after discovering that Jerry was a poacher. She walks over to the phone to call the cops, correctly assuming the two men are poachers as well, only for Parker to nod, and Burroughs executes Mona.
What the hell do you want?
Schnapps. Please.
Later, Parker and Burroughs arrive at a cabin and meet Jerry, who is initially disinterested in the pair. Parker notices her Purple Heart and mentions that he served in the same war during Desert Storm. After a brief conversation, it's revealed that orders Parker gave saved Jerry's life. Suddenly, she's more than willing to help them with their task of hunting a bear. The trio endures a harsh storm to reach an old abandoned Cold War station. Jerry recounts that children in the area used to play there, but they began disappearing one by one. The parents of the community eventually boarded it up, and it has sat abandoned ever since. Jerry finds bear tracks, and Parker is satisfied. It becomes clear that Parker is strangely attracted to Jerry, which Burroughs finds annoying. Parker orders Burroughs and Jerry to set traps and get the fort operational, while he recons the area. Burroughs suspects Parker is trying to avoid hard work, but Parker, knowing Jerry is watching, feels the need to assert his authority before leaving, reminding them he's in charge. He opens the door and steps into the snowstorm. While alone, Burroughs comments on Jerry's body. She tells him he doesn't need to try so hard with the brooding act, and begins flirting with him. Burroughs asks about her lady friend at the bar. Jerry responds that she enjoys the company of both men and women, stating, "Some meat you eat, some meat you kiss." She manages to extract from Burroughs that he and Parker are working on a 70-30 split if they manage to bag an endangered species. Jerry offers a 50-50 split if something happens to Parker. Jerry knows how much the endangered bear is worth on the open market and tells Burroughs to get rid of Parker so they can both be rich. But with how untrustworthy poachers are, Parker already assumed this would happen and planned for it.
Colonel, I think we'll have 2 dead bitches in this compound pretty soon.
Parker then remarks that someone already beat them to the first bear and asks what her real plan is. Burroughs stands by Parker, affirming his loyalty. Parker shines his flashlight upward, and something flies over the station.
Dumb son of a bitch. What the hell was that?
In the ensuing silence, Jerry slips away unseen. Parker and Burroughs realize they'll have to hunt her down before hunting the bear. The power then cuts out, and Parker assumes Jerry sabotaged the generator. They shuffle through the station, carefully avoiding traps, stumbling in the dark as the sounds of a bear growl and screams echo outside. They stop when they hear the cry of a baby, mixed with the growls of various animals, as if something outside is mimicking sounds to lure them. Following the sounds, they reach a room filled with hanging cocoons containing various animals. The baby's cry comes from a broken baby doll. Creeped out, they slowly back out, only to encounter a little girl in the hallway who says she and her friends are lost. Parker places his hand on the girl's cheek to comfort her, only to find it ice cold. Burroughs checks for himself, realizing she would have to be dead to feel that cold. A screeching sound from the cocoon room draws their attention, and the girl begins to walk away. Parker calls out, asking where she's going, only for her to turn around, revealing a contorted face. Parker and Burroughs scream in fear. They rush back into the cocoon room as all the creatures inside roar. Turning back, they see the girl has vanished. Jerry reappears, revealing that she once hated this town, but now they need her. The cocoons begin to rupture. She explains that Parker's shelling didn't save her. It killed both the enemy and their own men. She survived, forced to live as an undead being. Now, after waiting patiently, she plans to repay him, and finally enact her revenge. Burroughs, seeing the creature scurrying free, claims he had nothing to do with the shelling, and shoots Parker in a last-ditch effort to try and buy himself more time to run away. Jerry commands her horde to prevent him from fleeing. Burroughs runs, leaving Parker to be feasted upon, but he steps into a trap and breaks his foot. Stumbling toward the door, the horrific screeches grow louder. Burroughs looks back and sees nothing is chasing him. He assumes the horde of vampires is likely busy feasting on Parker. He runs out into the snow, cursing the demonic bloodsuckers. Burroughs reaches Jerry's cabin, thinking the sunlight will protect him. Jerry's alarm goes off, showing 10 a.m., yet it's still dark. Burroughs notices a lit cigarette, realizing someone else beat him to the cabin. A figure leaps from the rafters and attacks. It's revealed to be a vampiric Mona who survived Burroughs' attempted execution earlier. During the struggle, Burroughs kills Mona with an iron fire poker. Jerry enters the cabin. Burroughs, terrified, asks where the sun is, and Jerry reveals a horrifying truth.
In Alaska, the sun isn't coming up for another 2 months.
This episode is based on a story called Marriage Vow from Haunt of Fear number 26, published back in 1954. The comic story is simpler. It centers on a husband and wife with a supernatural twist. The wife returns from the dead, and the husband faces grim consequences. Short, punchy, and with that signature twist ending. The TV episode keeps the core idea of humans becoming prey to something supernatural but expands it for television. The Alaska setting, the added character of Jerry, and the ex-soldier backstory all make the story bigger, more suspenseful, and cinematic. Whereas the comic is gothic and claustrophobic, the episode uses the wilderness itself as a character, isolated, cold, and unforgiving. While the comic gave us the seed of the story, the TV show turned it into a full-blown survival horror story with atmosphere, tension, and a modern twist. This episode pays homage to The Thing. All three main characters are untrustworthy for their own reasons, meaning you don't know who's going to come out on top until the very end. This episode was also referenced in 2007's 30 Days of Night. It was also a major inspiration for the movie. Michael Ironside is one of those actors who plays a good guy, but an even better bad guy. And my saying still holds true. The best bad guys are often played by the nicest people. Ironside is widely regarded as kind and dedicated both on and off the screen. You might recognize him from Total Recall or Starship Troopers, and if not, his voice will probably sound familiar. He played Sam Fisher, the hero of the Splinter Cell series. He's incredibly loving to his fans. In fact, he reportedly needs a handler at conventions because he gets so easily caught up in conversations with passionate fans. He loves answering questions about the many characters he's played, sharing stories and insights about his work. He's one of my all-time favorite actors. I actually watched 2015's Turbo Kid just because he was in it. The funny thing is, he said playing the main bad guy, Zeus, was actually one of his favorite characters in recent memory. Our final story is titled You Murderer, also from Season 6, but Episode 15, originally airing on January 25th, 1995. Our story takes place entirely from a first-person perspective. We're looking through the eyes of Mr. Lou Spinelli. The episode opens during a board meeting about company slogans. Lou's watch alarm chimes, and a receptionist walks in to tell him he has a phone call from someone named Oscar. Lou answers the phone, but it turns out to be his wife, Betty. She tells him she's still alive, that Oscar tried and failed to kill her, and that she's calling the police. Panicked, Lou makes an excuse and bolts from the meeting. He speeds down the road, hell-bent to get home as fast as possible. The whole time, Lou is having a flashback to a conversation in Oscar's office. It's revealed that Oscar is Lou's doctor, the one who performed facial reconstruction surgery to make him look like Humphrey Bogart, helping him escape some serious criminal charges. Lou accuses Oscar of betraying him, insisting that only the two of them knew his true identity. Oscar, angered by the accusation, reminds Lou that if the truth came out, they'd both go to prison. He insists he had nothing to gain by exposing him. To keep their secret safe, Oscar suggests a new plan: to kill Lou's wife. Back in the present, Lou pulls up to his house and enters the elevator, narrating his thoughts about the situation he's in. He draws his gun and walks through the front door, only to find the place seemingly empty. Then he spots Oscar lying motionless on the floor. Lou bends down to check on him, only for Oscar to suddenly pull a gun on him. It's revealed that Betty, Lou's wife, has been cheating on him with Oscar all along. The two had set everything up to make it look like Oscar was the victim, planning to run away together once Lou was out of the picture. Their plan was simple. Lou would drink poisoned liquor from a flask, and after he died, they would stage a note making it look like Lou opted out. Yeah, I know. Shitty wording. But YouTube has rules. I mean, I could talk about murders, disemboweling, and the most gruesome shit, but saying that pesky S word, well, that would be a step too far. Yeah, I love that saying a single word can nuke my channel or get it age-gated, even in the context of a story. You gotta say dumb shit like sue or slide or self-deleted instead of just saying the fucking word. Oops, I just said But Lou figured Oscar wouldn't actually shoot him, that it would ruin their plan if he died by a bullet. When Betty tries to leave the room, Lou fights back. He and Oscar struggle, and Lou gains the upper hand, until Betty smashes him over the head with a statue, killing him instantly. Yet somehow, Lou is still conscious, mentally speaking.
He's still able to see and think, even narrating internally, remarking that he can still feel the pain of them moving him around. Oscar and Betty quickly readapt their plan. They'll dump the body and say Lou went missing. As they're starting to move him, there's a knock at the door. Oscar stuffs Lou's body into a nearby closet. And through Lou's point of view, we watch as they quickly send his assistant Erica away, using an improvised cover story. Just as the door closes, Lou falls out of the closet, flat onto his face. Oscar and Betty kiss, believing they've gotten away with it, before placing a hat over Lou's face. They load Lou's body into his own car and drive him out of town. We can't see much, but once the hat is removed, we see that Oscar and Betty are digging a hole, laughing and joking as they work.
How deep you gonna make that thing?
Deep.
Well, help me get him out of the car. He's starting to stiffen up.
That's more than you ever did for me.
Suddenly, Lou's assistant Erica reappears, holding them at gunpoint while trying to call the police. But she struggles to get through. Betty seizes the opportunity, pulling a gun she had taken from Lou earlier and shooting Erica dead on the spot. The bullet passes through Erica, through the windshield, and right into Lou, setting off an ironic chain of events.
Yes!
Much better.
Then something strange happened. Turned out that Betty was a hell of a shot. We're talking something the Warrant Commission would have been proud of. That bullet killed Erica, smashed the windshield, tore through my chest, and severed my spine.
Look out, the car! Oh my God! Run! Run!
As Lou's body is carried away, we see Betty and Oscar's fate, dying in the very hole they dug for Lou. As the medics look at Lou's face, they're slightly confused.
Haven't I seen this guy someplace before?
Nah.
You Murderer is based on a story from Shock Suspense Stories number 14. The episode incorporated footage of Humphrey Bogart, blended with new footage from an impersonator. Bogart is actually credited as a guest star in the episode. Director Robert Zemeckis also added in a bit with Alfred Hitchcock, and even a wink and nudge parody of Forrest Gump, the film for which Zemeckis won an Oscar just a few months before filming this episode. They used the same CGI face masking technology here. The episode takes place from a first-person perspective, which in my opinion somewhat limits it, but it's necessary for the gimmick to work. I do feel they overused Bogart just a bit. By modern standards, it isn't as convincing, but remember, this was meant to be seen on a low-resolution CRT TV. Watching it on a modern HD or 4K monitor makes the effect far less believable. Overall, the episode straddles the line between modern and classic in a nice way. John Lithgow is known for playing characters who are both charming and menacing, which fits perfectly with EC Comics' twisted morality tales. I can confidently say Lithgow plays a good bad guy because he's genuinely a good guy in real life. In the 1989 Batman movie, Lithgow was in the front running to play the Joker, but got cold feet and talked Tim Burton out of casting him. He later admitted he regretted it.
Besides which, at that point, I thought, who is going to want to see a movie about Batman?
Another great call by you.
So I basically talked Tim Burton out of even considering me.
Perfect.
Great. Can you believe that?
Good.
Our first story is titled Judy, You're Not Yourself Today, from Season 2, Episode 11, originally airing on June 12, 1990. Our story begins in a quiet suburban home, a home that seems calm and normal, but inside Donald, a man obsessed with firearms, stands in the living room, a shotgun in his hands, talking to himself. His wife Judy asks who he's talking to. Donald pops his head around the corner and says nobody, before joining her at the table. They have a short conversation, light and familiar, before the doorbell rings. Judy looks out the window and says it's a solicitor. Donald narrows his eyes, goes to the door, shotgun in hand, to greet the man at the doorstep. The door swings open to reveal him nervously holding a clipboard, a petition in his hands, seeking signatures for gun control. The visitor is polite and earnest, trying to explain the petition. Donald laughs, lifting the shotgun in a casual but deliberate gesture aimed at the man's chest. The volunteer flinches. Donald asks him to repeat what the petition is for. Words fail him. Judy mutters apologies, telling the man Donald can get a bit carried away. The man says this is exactly why gun control is needed. Donald laughs and points the gun at Judy, pulling the trigger. A metallic click makes her jump. She loses her temper, yelling at Donald to get inside before shooing the man away and closing the door. The two lightly argue inside, Judy saying that she's getting wrinkles from stress as she looks in the mirror, and that Donald pointing a shotgun at her isn't helping. Donald, dismissive, leaves for the gun club, and Judy is left alone. She paces the house, drinking water, checking her reflection, worried about the fine lines showing on her face. Suddenly, a knock at the door. She opens it to find an elderly woman carrying a leather briefcase. Smiling warmly, she introduces herself as a cosmetics representative, offering free consultations and rare products. The woman compliments Judy's skin, then points out subtle imperfections. She opens the briefcase and shows her a glowing pendant, saying it can enhance beauty and youth. Intrigued, Judy accepts. The moment the pendant touches her, green light glows. Donald returns home to find the elderly woman claiming to be Judy, speaking with her voice, recounting memories only Judy could know. Judy, trapped in the witch's body, tries to speak, but her voice is weak. He is confused and alarmed, but the older woman convinces him. The phone ringing interrupts their conversation. It's Donald's friend, saying that Judy isn't seeming like herself. He's seen her at the train station bar, and when he tried to talk to her, she told him to go to hell. Donald, wanting to get to the bottom of this, tricks Judy in the old woman's body. Locking her in the closet, he loads a handgun before rushing off to the train station. At the train station, Donald sees Judy. He looks at her, but she walks right past him, as if she doesn't even know who he is. Finally, fully convinced, Donald comes up with a plan on the fly, making up a story about her having cancer and not to run off to Vegas, and to spend her last few weeks with him instead. The witch, taken aback, falls for the ruse hook, line, and sinker. She causes the necklace to glow in the two seemingly swapped places once again. In a flash, Judy comes to, laying on the floor of the train station. Donald gets her to her feet, and the two rush home, finding the old witch still locked in the closet. Donald racks the slide on his gun, and the complaining in the closet stops. Donald says that she's not so tough. The witch growls, and Donald fires off multiple pot shots, destroying a bunch of figurines and turning their house into Swiss cheese. A few bullets find their way through the door, and the witch stumbles out and collapses dead to the floor. After it's over, Donald exclaims how fantastic and thrilling it was as he dances around the living room.
That was great! What a rush! Blam, blam, blam! Ah, I blew her away.
They bury the witch's lifeless body in the basement. Judy places the necklace back into the bedroom safe. Her eyes lingered on the green gem. Donald catches her eyeing it and asks what she's up to. She comments how beautiful the necklace is, and inquires if they truly have to keep it locked away in the safe. Donald says they can't get rid of it due to it being evidence, but reveals that he tried melting and crushing it, but remarks that it can't seem to be destroyed. Judy asks if they can hang it somewhere in the house so they can look at it all the time. Donald refuses, closing the safe and reminding her what the necklace did, and that they have a witch buried in their basement. 3 months pass, curiosity winning over her better judgment. One night she sneaks into the safe and puts on the pendant. The green glow returns and she is magically transported back into the old woman's body. Meanwhile, downstairs, Donald goes to get a glass of milk and is totally unaware of the situation. The decayed body of the witch jump scares him. She reaches out towards him, whimpering for help. Donald stumbles around the house as he searches for a gun, desperately trying to find a way to put down the reanimated witch. While this happens, the original Judy approaches, asking why he's trying to kill her. Confused and overwhelmed, Donald throws her a set of keys, asking her to fetch the Jaguar. The original Judy looks confused, as they don't even own a Jaguar. The witch moves, revealing herself, and Donald opens fire. Her dying words trigger one more body swap, leaving Judy in the wounded body. Donald holds her in his arms as she slowly dies, and the screen fades to black. This episode was based on a story from the comic Tales from the Crypt number 25. The TV adaptation was written by Scott Nimmerfro, who wrote and produced many episodes of the series.
The most recognizable face of the episode is Carol Kane, who plays Judy. She is known for movies like The Princess Bride and Scrooged, but perhaps most famously for her role as Grandma Addams in 1993's Addams Family Values. The funny thing is, for her role in Addams Family Values, Kane was put into heavy prosthetics to make her look much older, even though she was the youngest adult actor on set, aside from Joan Cusack, who played Debbie. Also appearing in this episode is Frances Bay, who plays the Witch in Red. Bay starred in many films, but most fans know her from Happy Gilmore, where she played Happy's loving grandmother. Doll was played by Brian Kerwin, who appeared in movies like 27 Dresses and is perhaps best known for playing Brian Powell, Robin Williams' loving and understanding father, in the 1996 comedy movie Jack. Overall, the episode is fun and filled with darkly comedic moments. Regardless of its IMDb ranking, fans generally have a positive reception, mainly because of Carol Kane and the grimly funny gun antics of Brian Kerwin as Donald. His over-the-top performance makes the episode even more enjoyable. Our next story is titled Easel Kill Ya, from Season 4, Episode 2, originally airing on June 27, 1992. Our story begins with a man named George dragging a dead body into a police station. He says that he's a dead man walking, and that the corpse is the man who killed him. The police draw their weapons, and like a Tarantino movie, we go back in time to see how we got to this point. We are taken back to a few days earlier, in a high-tech research lab, bright, sterile, humming with machines and the quiet tension of ambitious scientists. At the center is George Gatlin, a bright man overflowing with bravado. He looks over a female scientist named Sophie, kicking himself for letting her get away. She jokingly retorts that he didn't let her do anything and that she was, in fact, the one who kicked him to the curb. Sophie continues to look for George's insulin. She finds it at the back of the cooler, asking why he stuck it in the cooler with H-cell 24, joking that one day they will mix it up and inject a lab rat with his insulin by mistake. George jokes that it would just make the rats hungry for chocolate. George asks Sophie to administer his medicine, as he has a fear of needles, but jokes that he likes having Sophie wait on him. A man named Pack enters the room in a storm of anger, asking why George gave an interview to the press without consulting them first. The article is a puff piece boasting that their drug H-cell 24 will be a bona fide cure-all and will be safe to use and available soon. Both Sophie and Pack lay into George, saying that the drug hasn't even gone to human trials yet, and that the article could only be true if they could work out the kink in the drug that makes it continue to eat away healthy cells after it's done hunting and destroying the damaged and diseased ones. George just smiles as Pat continues on that it would likely kill a person if they were injected with the current formula. George says that the press will get them the funding they desperately need to continue the research. Pack says that media stunts like this show that George has lost sight of the reason they decided to make the drug in the first place, yelling that it isn't about money or a race to the bank. The two get into a heated conversation, with Sophie in the middle trying to keep the peace. George shuts down the argument, telling Pack that his tenure isn't based on how good of a scientist he is, but rather that George stuck his neck out for him over the project, and that he's doing what's needed to ensure they all still have jobs and can deliver on the drug they set out to create, and that if he wants to make it a reality, he'll shut up and do his job. Pack, rightfully feeling disrespected, storms out of the lab. We flash forward to see Sophie tying one on at the bar, clearly stressed over the current climate of the lab. George shows up and kisses her on the cheek but is pushed away, with her saying that she came there for a bit of peace. George buys them both a drink, asking if she's really still mad at him, and that he thought she would be more on his side. She asks if he's serious or really that stupid, reminding him of the last time he pulled a media stunt like this. He told a venture capitalist that the drug was patented. George says that it was, but Sophie reminds him that it happened 6 months after the fact, saying that his antics keep putting the project in jeopardy. George mistakes her passion for the project as passion for him and flirts, trying to get her back to his place. She says the idea of being intimate with him after what he pulled makes her sick, before downing another drink. But, of course, being tales from the crypt, the two sleep together anyway. After some post-nut clarity, Sophie kicks George out, telling him to keep their involvement with each other a secret from Pack, as it could harm their overall partnership on the project.
She also tells George that the infighting with Pac is only slowing their progress down, and that George should be more understanding. George slightly patronizes her over her words before leaving. The next morning, George apologizes to Pac, offering him a cup of coffee as a peace offering. Pac, knowing George, asks what his endgame is, knowing that he never says sorry unless it's to get something. But George is genuinely apologizing, and Pac accepts. The two part on good terms as George goes to sit down at his desk. Pac goes to put his lunch in the fridge, and George asks him to get his insulin. Pac jokes that he's not his nurse before blindly grabbing a vial and syringe. Sophie takes it from him and goes to administer the medication. She injects him, and Pac calls out for her to stop, saying that it's the wrong drug. That the experimental drug they're working on was on the same shelf as the insulin, but it's too late. Sophie has already injected the H-cell 24 into George's arm. George screams at them to inject him with something to turn the cell-seeking drug off. Pac and Sophie shout back that this is what they were trying to tell him yesterday, that the drug isn't ready, and they can't turn it off, and that such a breakthrough is at least 6 months away. George understandably freaks out, screaming at them for essentially killing him. George passes out and comes to on the floor near his desk, with Sophie at his side. George asks what's going to happen to him. Sophie says that the H-cell will break down bad cells in his body first, rapidly followed by the healthy ones. Pac steps in and says that the current version of the antidote would cause cellular death and would kill him outright. George asks how long he has left before the H-cell starts killing him. Pac says that he likely has only a few hours left. George starts reeling, thinking about what the drug is currently doing to him. Sophie yells his name to snap him back to reality. George leaves the lab in a cold sweat, wandering the streets and ending up at the local bar. There, he has vivid hallucinations, seeing a man sitting at the bar with blisters and tumors on his face, and in a snap, the man returns to normal. The bartender notices that George is having a rough time and asks if he wants another drink. George says that he really just came in to use their phone to call Sophie, but she's not answering. The bartender says that she and Pac were just in the bar a few hours ago, drinking in a booth and seemingly celebrating something. George, thinking that they found a cure, goes to Sophie's apartment. When George walks in, Sophie is nowhere to be found. The phone rings as George calls out her name. The answering machine picks up, and it's Pac, saying that he feels guilty as hell for messing with George's insulin, going on to say that Sophie was right that he likely deserves it, but that he's still feeling awful and that she should meet him at the lab, saying that he has something he needs to show her. George, hearing this message, lets it all sink in. When presented with the evidence, he determines that they infected him with the H-cell drug on purpose. George goes to the lab to confront Pac, hitting him over the head with a baseball bat. Pac lays on the floor disoriented, telling George it's not what he thinks. George goes over to the lab fridge, fills a syringe with a mixture of H-cell and insulin, and forcefully injects Pac, telling him that he can play the same game. The mixture seemingly kills Pac nearly instantly. We flash back to the police station, where George finishes the story to the police. They are so taken aback by the story that they holster their weapons. George says that shooting him now would be a mercy, as he's likely riddled with tumors and is minutes from dying anyway. Sophie enters the station in horror, looking down at Pac's lifeless body. She looks up at George, asking what he's done. George remarks that he only returned the favor. Sophie comes clean in front of the police, telling George that he's not dying, that they doctored his insulin with something to make him feel slightly sick as a way of teaching him a lesson, and that he was never injected with H-cell. She goes on to say that if he had talked to Pac before attacking him, he would have told him that the H-cell problem was solved, and that the drug is now stable and viable. They only wanted to teach him a cruel lesson before revealing the truth. George, lost, stares into the camera as the screen fades to black. This episode was based on a story from Crime Suspense Stories number 23. The basic premise remains the same, but like many adaptations, it was updated to fit the time it was produced. A prank that goes too far and leads to a grim fate for everyone involved. The lab and experimental drug are creations of the TV show. Dylan McDermott, who plays George, is the standout character of the episode. He went on to play many major roles, but horror fans know him best from his appearances on American Horror Story. Even though this episode was filmed in 1992,
McDermott strangely looks nearly identical 34 years later. Clevin Little, who played Pac, is best known for his role as Sheriff Bart in Blazing Saddles. He won a Tony Award for his Broadway work and a Primetime Emmy Award later in his career. Also starring is Sonia Braga as Sophie, who appeared in many TV shows, including Warehouse 13 and Luke Cage. At the time of release, fans ranked the episode unfavorably, mainly due to its lack of the dark humor or suspense that made the anthology famous. However, in more recent years, it has been seen more favorably, appreciated mainly for its acting and unique premise, though it rarely appears in fan rankings of the series' best installments. But that's all I have for this one. I want to thank our channel members, and thank you all for watching. Take care, stay safe, have a great week, and we'll see you in the next one.